This is a true story, and it shows why you don't mess with God. There are stories that aren't told aloud in churches. Stories that don't end with glittering miracles or dramatic conversions before crowds. Some stories happen in the silence of the soul, where no one else can see, where God works not with thunder, but with whispers that echo for decades. This is the story of Marcos Tavares, a man who defied God out of pride and discovered that the divine answer came not as punishment, but as a slow and painful awakening that would transform every fiber of his being. Marcos Tavares was 38 years old when it all happened. In the eyes of the world, he was the perfect portrait of success, a successful businessman in the construction industry in Fortaleza, owner of 3 companies, married to Juliana for 15 years, father of 2 children. His trajectory was recounted as an example in the city's business meetings. The son of a humble bricklayer and a seamstress from the Bom Jardim neighborhood, Marcos grew up watching his father leave at 5 in the morning and return at 7 at night, his hands calloused and his body bent over by the weight of the cement bags. His mother, Dona Maria, was a woman of deep faith. Every morning, even before the sun rose, she knelt before a small, makeshift altar in the living room and prayed for her 3 children. "My son, whatever you achieve in life, thank God first," she would say, holding Marcos's rough hands when he was still a boy. "Alone, we are nothing." But Marcos saw those words differently. He saw poverty, struggle, bills that didn't add up at the end of the month. He saw his father aging rapidly, while his bosses grew rich from his sweat. From an early age, a decision crystallized in his heart. He would be different. He would be rich. He would be powerful. And he would achieve it all with his own hands. At 16, he started working as a bricklayer's assistant. By 18, he was already a foreman. At 23, with a risky loan and a lot of audacity, he opened his first small construction company. 10 years later, he was already one of the most respected businessmen in Fortaleza. Each victory reinforced his conviction. He didn't need anyone, not even God. Dona Maria continued praying. She continued inviting her son to church on Sundays. Marcos rarely went, only so as not to hurt her feelings, but he sat on the church bench with his mind occupied with spreadsheets, projects, and negotiations. When the pastor spoke about humility, about recognizing that everything comes from God, Marcos felt a growing unease within him. It's easy to talk about humility when you don't have bills to pay, he thought. It's easy to say that God gives everything when you haven't gone hungry. The challenge didn't happen in a planned way. It wasn't a calculated moment. It was an explosion of pride accumulated over years, a storm that had been brewing in the depths of his soul. It was a Tuesday in March 2019. Dona Maria had been hospitalized for 3 days, battling severe pneumonia. At 72 years old, her frail body resisted, but the doctors were not optimistic. Marcos spent his days divided between the hospital, the office, and the most important project of his career, a luxury condominium on Barramar that, if completed, would make him one of the richest businessmen in Serra. That afternoon, he was alone in the hospital room with his mother. She was sleeping, connected to tubes and monitors that beeped monotonously. Marcos held her hand, so small and thin now, and felt a tightness in his chest that he couldn't name. That's when the pastor of his mother's church entered the room. Pastor Enrique was a 60-year-old man with gray hair and a serene voice. He and Dona Maria had been friends for decades. "Marcos," he said softly, after praying silently beside the bed, "your mother is a warrior of faith. God will take care of her." Marcos nodded, saying nothing. "You know," the pastor continued, "she always prays for you. She always asks God to touch your heart, that you recognize where all your strength, all your achievements come from." Something inside Marcos broke. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was the fear of losing his mother. Perhaps it was simply that pride, nurtured for years, finally overflowing. "Pastor, with all due respect," Marcos said, his voice low but firm, "I love my mother. But I need to be honest with you. Everything I have, everything I've built, was with my own hands. I worked 16 hours a day. I took risks that others didn't dare. While others prayed, I studied. While others waited for miracles, I made them happen." The pastor just looked at him, without judgment, only sadness in his eyes. "My mother is a saint," Marcos continued, the words coming out like a bitter confession. "But she spent her whole life on her knees, begging, pleading, and remained poor. My father broke his back working and trusting in God, and what did he get? Poverty, pain, endless work." "Marcos." "No, Pastor. Let me finish." Marcos's eyes shone now, not with tears, but with a fierce conviction. "I respect people's faith, but I'm not going to pretend to believe in something just because it's comforting. If God exists, he had nothing to do with my success. It was me, only me." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. The pastor opened his mouth to speak, but Marcos interrupted him, his voice rising in tone. "You know what? If God really exists, if he is as powerful as you say, then let him prove it. Let him show me that I am wrong. Because so far, the only thing I've seen is that those who work hard win, and those who only pray fall behind." The words came out like a slap in the silence of the room. The monitor continued beeping. Dona Maria slept, oblivious to the challenge her son had just issued. Pastor Enrique stood up slowly. His eyes were moist, but not with anger, with compassion. "Marcos," he said, his voice trembling, "be careful what you ask for. God doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. But when we open ourselves to him, when we stop fighting alone, that's when we truly see." Marcos turned his face away. He didn't want to continue that conversation. The pastor left, and Marcos stayed there, alone with his sleeping mother, with his turbulent thoughts, and with a challenge launched to the heavens that he didn't believe would be answered. But the heavens did not answer with thunder. There was no lightning. There was no immediate punishment. What came was something much deeper, something that would take Marcos months to begin to understand. In the following days, Marcos's life continued seemingly normally. Dona Maria improved and was discharged from a hospital a week later. The luxury condominium was progressing according to schedule. Business was thriving. Everything seemed to confirm his conviction. He didn't need God. He never had. But something had changed. Something subtle, imperceptible to those looking from the outside, but devastating to those who lived it inside. Marcos began to feel empty. It wasn't a defined sadness. It wasn't depression, at least not in the classic sense. It was an absence. As if someone had turned off a light he didn't even know existed within him. As if all the noise of the world had become louder, but also more distant, meaningless. He woke up at 5 in the morning, as always. He checked his emails, solved problems, made decisions that involved millions of reis. But deep down, there was a question he couldn't silence. What for? What for working so hard? What for achieving more? What for proving his worth if, at the end of the day, lying in bed next to Juliana, he felt completely alone, even surrounded by everything he had built? Juliana began to notice. "Are you okay?" she asked one night while they were having dinner. The children were already asleep. The large, luxurious house they lived in seemed to echo with emptiness. "I'm great," Marcos replied automatically, without taking his eyes off his cell phone. "You're not great. You're barely here." Marcos then looked up. Juliana was looking at him with a mixture of worry and frustration. She was a beautiful, intelligent woman who had given up her own career to take care of the family while he built his empire. And he barely saw her. "It's just the stress of the project," he lied. "It'll pass." But it didn't. 3 months after the challenge he issued in that hospital room, Marcos began to notice something disturbing. His success, so solid, so unquestionable, was beginning to show cracks. It wasn't financial losses. It wasn't bankruptcy or tragedy. It was something deeper and crueler, the realization that everything he had built was hollow. He looked at his employees and saw fear, not admiration. Respect, yes, but the kind of respect you have for someone who can destroy your life with one decision. He had been tough, demanding, ruthless. After all, that's how you win in the business world, isn't it? But now, when he entered the office, he saw the employees' gazes avert. Conversations stopped when he approached. He was powerful, but he was alone in that power. One morning, his oldest partner, Roberto, resigned. They had started together when the construction company was just a dream and a huge debt. Roberto was more than a partner, he was a friend. Or at least Marcos thought he was. Why? Marcos asked, genuinely surprised. We're at the best moment in the company's history. We're going to make more money this year than in the last 5 years combined. Roberto remained silent for a long moment, standing in front of Marcos's desk, holding a resignation letter. Marcos, I don't recognize you anymore, he finally said. You've become the thing we hated most when we were young. You've become the boss who exploits, who doesn't listen, who only sees numbers. I built all of this. Marcos began to defend himself. You built an empire, Roberto interrupted him, his voice tired. But you destroyed friendships in the process. You destroyed trust. I don't know when you changed, but I don't want to be a part of it anymore. Roberto left, and Marcos was left alone in his enormous office, surrounded by trophies and certificates on the walls, feeling that each one was an accusation. The last straw came from where Marcos least expected it, his family. It was a Saturday night. Marcos had arrived home after a long day at the construction site. He was tired, irritated because a supplier had delayed an important delivery. All he wanted was to take a shower and sleep. But when he entered the living room, he found Juliana and their 2 children, 13-year-old Lucas and 10-year-old Anna, sitting on the sofa, waiting for him. There was something in their posture, in the seriousness of their faces, that made Marcos stop. We need to talk, Juliana said. Marcos sat heavily in the armchair opposite them. Lucas has something to tell you, Juliana continued, tears welling in her eyes. The boy looked at the floor, his shoulders hunched. Lucas, Marcos called, trying to soften his voice, though he felt the irritation growing. What is it? Dad, Lucas began, his voice trembling. At school there was an activity. We had to draw the person we admire most. That's great, Marcos said, trying to smile. And who did you draw? The silence was painful. I drew Grandpa, Lucas finally said, and tears began to stream down his face. Everyone asked why I didn't draw you. You're rich, you're important. But I don't know you, Dad. You're never here. And when you are, you're on the phone or you're angry. The words hit Marcos like punches. He opened his mouth to respond, to defend himself, but Anna spoke first. I was afraid to tell you, Dad, the girl said, her voice small. But I didn't want to come home today. I wanted to stay at Grandma Maria's house. Because it's happier there. People talk there. There's love there. Marcos felt something break inside him. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sound, but was definitive, like a mirror falling to the floor and shattering into 1,000 pieces. I did everything for you, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Everything. I worked so that you would have the best, so that you would never go through what I went through. We didn't want the best, Lucas said, raising his red eyes. We wanted you. Juliana then stood up and approached Marcos. She knelt in front of him, held his hands. Marcos, I love you, but I'm losing you. The boys are losing you. You're so busy proving that you're strong, that you're capable, that you forgot to live. You forgot to be happy. I am happy, Marcos said, but the tears that began to fall from his eyes belied his words. No, love. You are not. And I don't know when you stop being. That night, Marcos couldn't sleep. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything he had built crushing his chest. At 3 a.m, he got up. He went downstairs silently and went to the garage. He sat in the car without starting the engine, just there in the dark and the silence. That's when everything crumbled. The tears came violently, uncontrollably. Marcos cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. He cried for his hard childhood. He cried for his father, who had died 2 years before without Marcos having time to tell him how much he admired him. He cried for his mother, whom he had hurt with his words. He cried for his children who didn't know him. He cried for his wife, whom he was losing. And he cried for himself, for the empty man he had become. I don't know who I am anymore, he whispered to the emptiness of the car. I don't know why I'm doing all this. I don't know. That's when his mother's words returned. Those words he had despised all his life. Alone, we are nothing. And for the first time, truly for the first time, Marcos understood. He had spent his entire life trying to prove that he didn't need anyone. Not God, not people, nobody. He had built an empire, yes, but he had built it alone. And loneliness was the only thing he had truly managed to create. His challenge to God had not been answered with punishment. There were no lightning strikes. There were no misfortunes. God had responded in a much deeper way by allowing Marcos to truly feel what it meant to be alone. Completely alone, even surrounded by everything. And it was unbearable. I was wrong, Marcos said aloud to the void, to God, to himself. I was wrong. There was no answer, only silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Not empty, but expectant, as if something were waiting, as if a door were being opened, and it was up to him to decide whether to enter or not. The next morning, Marcos did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He went to church midweek. He didn't go to see the pastor. He didn't go to ask for forgiveness or make promises. It was simply because he didn't know where else to go. The small church in his mother's neighborhood was empty at that hour of the morning. Only an elderly woman was cleaning the pews. Marcos went in and sat on the last pew in the corner, like an intruder in foreign territory. He stood there, silent, looking at the simple altar, at the crucifix on the wall. And for the first time in decades, he prayed. Not with pretty words, not with dramatic pleas, just with brutal honesty. I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if I care, but I need help. I don't know what to do anymore. I built everything, and I have nothing. I'm lost. Please, help me find myself. There was no voice from heaven. There was no mystical feeling. But there was something, a tiny lightness, as if a weight of thousands of kilos had become just 1 gram lighter. Still crushing, still painful, but 1 gram lighter. It was a beginning. The process wasn't quick. It wasn't magical. There was no instant transformation. Marcos started small. He started by coming home earlier, having dinner with his family 3 times a week, then 4, then 5, leaving his cell phone in another room during dinner, asking his children about their day, and really listening to their answers. He started going to therapy, something he had always considered for weak people. There, in the office of a patient psychologist, he began to untangle the knots he had created within himself over decades. He began to change his leadership style at the company. He called employees for individual conversations. He apologized where necessary. He began to listen, not just to respond, but to understand. And yes, he started going back to church. Not as someone who goes to mark their presence, but as someone who goes seeking something, even without knowing exactly what. Pastor Enrique never mentioned that conversation in the hospital. But whenever he saw Marcos, he smiled in a way that said, "Welcome back." When Dona Maria learned that her son was attending church, she cried. But this time they were tears of joy. "I never stopped praying for you," she said, holding her son's face in her hands. "Never. Not for a single day. Because I knew that one day you would find yourself. Not with me, not with the church. With yourself. With what truly matters." 6 months after that night in the garage, Marcos was in a situation he never imagined, sitting in a circle of men at church, in a support group for fathers who wanted to be more present. Marcos Tavares, the successful businessman, publicly admitting that he didn't know how to be a father, that he had failed, that he needed help. A year later, he sold one of his companies, not out of financial necessity, but by choice, because he realized he didn't need to have the entire empire if it meant losing himself in the process. With the money from the sale, he created a fund to help poor young people from Bom Jardim, the neighborhood where he grew up, to study. Not for marketing, not to appear on social media, but because he finally understood what his mother had tried to teach him throughout his life. What you have only makes sense when it is shared. Lucas started smiling more at home. Anna stopped being afraid to talk to her father. Juliana said one night while they were lying down, "I feel like I've got you back." And Marcos was still ambitious. He still worked hard. He still wanted to grow. But now he understood something fundamental. Success without connection is empty. Power without love is prison. Strength without vulnerability is loneliness. 2 years after that challenge launched in a hospital room, Marcos was there again. But this time, it wasn't Donna Maria who was hospitalized. It was him visiting an employee who had suffered an accident on the construction site. Pastor Enrique was there too, talking to the employee's family in the hallway. When he saw Marcos, he approached. "How are you?" the pastor asked. Marcos thought before answering. He thought about everything that had changed, about everything he had lost and everything he had gained, about all the times he had fallen and gotten up, about all the nights he still fought against the old Marcos, the proud Marcos who wanted to prove that he didn't need anyone. "I'm still learning," Marcos finally said. "I still struggle. I still fail. But now I know I don't have to be alone in this fight." The pastor smiled. That sad and wise smile. "You know," he said softly, "God never needed to prove anything to you. You needed to prove to yourself that the path you were following led nowhere." "I know," Marcos said, and there was peace in his voice. "The punishment I expected never came. The punishment I thought I deserved never happened." "Because God doesn't work that way," the pastor replied. "He doesn't punish to destroy. He allows us to live with the consequences of our choices so that we can learn. You chose the path of pride, of loneliness, and God allowed you to feel completely where that path led, not out of cruelty but out of love. Because only when we reach the end of ourselves is there room for something greater." Marcos nodded. He understood. He finally understood. The challenge he had issued 2 years earlier was not answered with thunder or dramatic miracles. It was answered with a mirror, with the painful truth about who he had become, with the emptiness that purposeless success creates, with the loneliness that pride fuels. And now, slowly, painfully, but surely, he was learning a new way of living. Not perfect, not without struggles, but real, connected, human. Marcos Tavares is still a businessman. He is still successful. But now, when he sits at the dinner table with his family, he is present. When his employees see him, they see not just a boss, but a leader who cares. When his mother looks at him, she sees not just the son who succeeded in life, but the son who finally found peace. There is a photo on the wall of his house now. It is old, faded. In it, a small boy stands next to his bricklayer father, both with their hands dirty with cement, smiling at the camera. Below the photo, on a small plaque that Marcos had made, is written a phrase: "Alone we are nothing." It was not a lesson learned in a day. It was a journey of deconstruction and reconstruction that continues to this day. Because pride is a deep root, and pulling it out hurts. It hurts a lot. But the pain of growing up, Marcos discovered, is different from the pain of loneliness. One transforms you, the other only consumes you. And when people ask Marcos about his success, about how he got to where he is, he no longer gives the answer he used to. He doesn't just talk about hard work, risks, and strategies. Now he smiles in a different way. A smile that carries scars, but also hope. And he says, "I built a lot with my own hands, but I learned that the most important things, the only ones that truly matter, cannot be built alone. They need love. They need connection. They need humility to recognize that we are all vulnerable, we all need each other, and that there is no shame in admitting that." It's a longer answer, more complex, less impressive for those seeking quick success formulas. But it's true. And for Marcos, ultimately, the truth matters more than impressions. The day he challenged God out of pride didn't end with divine punishment. It ended with something much deeper, an invitation to die to the old self and be born into something new. Not perfect, but real. And every day, he chooses to accept that invitation again. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one step at a time, because that's the real journey. There is no finish line, just the daily walk towards being a little more human, a little more connected, a little more alive. And in that, finally, Marcos found not only success, but meaning. Not just achievements, but peace. Not just an empire, but a home. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for dedicating these minutes of your life to listening to this story. Thank you for opening your heart to reflect on something you may never have thought about before. If this story touched you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your comment below telling us what you felt. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and activate the bell. Because every week I bring real stories like this one. Stories that transform, that teach, that make us stop and think. May God bless your life, and may you never forget. Some lessons we only learn when we stop to listen. Until the next video.